feast of Saint Kristina. I'm good to be back here again in Portalas. And today is a few considerations on the saint. Just a couple of days ago, in the mystery of the times that we are about to go into. Saint Praxedes. Saint Praxedes was a virgin, her feast just a couple of days ago, the same day as Saint Mary Magdalene, so July 22nd, just a couple of days ago. And Praxedes was a saint, a virgin who lived in Rome during the time of the great persecution. And here we're reading the Holy Breviary on her life. Praxedes, a Roman virgin, sister of the Virgin Pudenziana. When the Emperor Marcus Antonius was persecuting the Christians, bestowed upon them wealth, labors, consolation, and every work of charity. For some she concealed in her house, others she encouraged to firmness of faith. She buried the bodies of others, and for those who were shut up in prison or who were put to forced labor, she saw to it that there was nothing lacking. When she could no longer endure so great a slaughter of the Christians, she prayed God that if it were expedient for her to die, He would take her away from such great evils. Accordingly, on the 12th of the calends of August, July 21st, she was called to heaven to receive the reward of her charity. Her body was buried by the priest pastor in the tomb of her father and her sister Pudenziana, which was in the cemetery of Priscilla on the Salarian Way. So a few considerations, and Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. Saint Praxedes, she was in the time of the great persecution of the church. And you know that there's so many martyrs. Many were skinned alive at that time, their heads chopped off, fed to the lions. Many put in forced labor camps, and died in the hard labor of the salt mines. Many had to flee into the desert. In fact, the fathers of the desert were some of those who began by fleeing from the Romans. And so many hundreds of thousands of followers of Christ were slaughtered by an evil empire. And Praxedes, she lived in the middle of Rome, which was the center of all the evil, where all the murders were happening, where all the great attacks were happening. What did she do? Anyone that followed Christ, anyone that was a Christian, that was a Catholic, that was a member of the true church, their life was always in danger. And they were captured and put to death. And Pudenziana, Praxedes, Pudenziana was a sister. Praxedes was one of the very few saints of those first 300 years that did not die a martyr. She died of charity. You know that there are many, many different flowers in God's garden, and these flowers will be at all times. There are times when there will be more martyrs and less confessors. And there will be times when there will be more confessors and less martyrs. But there will never be a time when there's no martyrs, and there will never be a time when there's no confessors. There will never be a time in which everyone is going to die the same way, in which everyone is going to have to be exactly the same in the army of God. Some will be priests, some will be sisters, some will be married, some will be alone, not married, nor priests, nor sisters. Some will be children, some will be adults. Some will be thrown in prison camps, others will not. Things are not going to happen to us as we expect. Praxedes was one of the great, great women of those first 300 years. And what is unusual about her, she was not beheaded. She was not thrown in prison. She was not tortured. And yet she did not care about these things. What is normal about her is that she was filled only with a desire of charity. She had a lot of wealth because she was related to the emperor. And what did she do? She took everything that she had and she gave it to the Christians, to the sick Catholics. Now, as it says here, some, they came into her place. And she bestowed on them their wealth and consolation. Every work of charity she did. For some, she concealed in her house. They would run away, and they would come to her house, and she would hide them. Well, what happens if she got caught? She would be put to death, but she wasn't caught. So she hid some in her house. And others, she encouraged to firmness of faith. When they would get captured, you be firm in the faith. Go and be a martyr. Some the firmness of faith. And she buried the bodies of others. And when they were wounded in prison, she brought them food, and she brought them everything they needed to survive. And if they were doing work, she helped them in their labors and eased their pains. All she did was great works of charity in an environment in which charity could not be done. Just like Tobias in the Old Testament was in an environment in which it was unsafe to be a Jew. An environment which was unsafe to be a follower of God. And what did he do? He buried the bodies of the dead. When it was forbidden, under pain of death, to do so. He hid the dead bodies in his houses. And Praxedes, she did more than Tobias. She did more. She not only buried the dead, she took care of those wounded Christians. She went to visit the sick. She went to visit those in the prisons. She encouraged everyone to be strong in the faith. And her heart was broken. One day, she said to our Lord, I cannot bear the evils. I cannot bear the evils that are coming down upon our holy church. I cannot bear the evils that are all around us. Let me die. And on July the 21st, she lay down, and in her sleep, she went to heaven. God determines the day of our death. But He listens to our prayer. She devoted her whole life to love, her whole life to charity, her whole life to taking care of others in an age in which it could not be done. And many people today say, we cannot do the same kind of charity as they did in the past. And besides, it's dangerous. And it was dangerous. She heard so many thousands of stories. She witnessed so many thousands of martyrs in the city of Rome, the most dangerous of all the cities in the whole Roman Empire. And there she was in the middle of it all. And she was not touched. She was not harmed. And God allowed this that we might understand who is the one that determines the moment of death, who determines whether an arrow hits us, who determines whether we are captured by the cops. God. God does. The other saint, just a few days before, St. Elizabeth, St. Jerome, Emiliani. St. Jerome was thrown into prison. And he was thrown in a dungeon in a war in northern Italy, where they fight each other all the time. And they forgot about him. They just left him in the dungeon to die. And he called upon the Blessed Virgin Mary. And she pulled him out of the dungeon. And he walked through all of the enemies right down the road, and they did not see him, because it was not God's will that he be captured. And just like St. Peter walked out of the prison, so St. Jerome walked out of the prison. He was filled with one desire, to take care of the orphans, to take care of those who were abandoned. And the rest of his life he devoted to the care of orphans, and the care of those who were abandoned in the streets of Italy. And so, God did not want him to die in the dungeon. Therefore, he did not die in the dungeon. He did not want him to die a martyr. Therefore, he did not die a martyr. In Praxedes, in the age in which there are so many martyrs, it is so much better to be a martyr. But there's something even better than being a martyr. And that's just simply living in the love of our Lord and dying the way He wants. And what does He want? Remember, our Lord did say, ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. And He's disturbed if we don't ask. He's disturbed if we don't seek. It's like an Italian wedding. You're supposed to go to the Godfather and ask favors. And He's offended if you don't. So our Lord Jesus Christ wants us to ask favors. And we ask them. And things happen according to His disposition and not ours. Jonas, for instance, when he was not very pleasing to God. Jonas, one of the great saints of our times. Tobias and Jonas are the two great saints of our times, of the Old Testament, that are the most saints of our times. And Jonas, who didn't believe the words of God, and was angry with God, and wanted to flee God, when that great storm rose up, and he realized the storm is because of me, wisdom was entering into his heart. Why is there a storm in the world? Why is there great sin in America? Why is there great tragedy going on throughout the whole world? Because of our sins. It's because of us. Particularly the sins of the priests. And secondly, the sins of the faithful. And only lastly, the sins of the non-Catholics. But first, the priests. Secondly, the Catholics. And then way down to the bottom, the sins of the Jews and the Masons and all the bad guys. Their sins don't move the world very much. But the sins of the Catholic, they move historical events. The sins of the priest, they move the whole civilizations. And so when we recognize, why is there a great crisis in our church? Why is there a great trouble in the world? It's because of my sins. And Jonas recognized that. He said, if you want the storm to cease, throw me in the sea. And they threw him in the sea. The only problem is, he didn't land in the sea. In the middle of the ocean, he didn't land in the ocean. He landed in the belly of a whale. And in the dark, he cried to the Lord. And from the bottom of the mountains, it says in the book of Jonas, from the bottom of the mountains to the bottom of the ocean, he cried to the Lord. And the Lord heard his prayer and brought him back to the shore from whence he came. And Praxedis, she was not worried about the Roman legions. She wasn't worried about the emperor. She wasn't worried about all the spies all around looking for the followers of Christ. And because she wasn't worried, and because she walked right down the main street, they couldn't find her. Because they were looking in all the corners. They were looking in the alleys, and they were looking inside of the dungeons. They were looking inside of the catacombs. They were looking inside of all, and she was walking down the center of the streets. And she was going straight to the bodies and carrying them off the streets. And these fools could not see her, and they did not know. But the good ones saw her. You see that Praxedis, that lady, in her big house? She took the dead body of a Christian. She buried it. She nursed back to health someone who was in the mines. I am fleeing the Romans. I'll go to her house. Surely she will receive me, and everyone was received in her house. We must have souls that are going to be like Praxedis in the times to come. We have to have souls like her. And remember, not everyone is going to be a martyr. Remember, St. Joan of Arc was afraid of the fire, and then she learned she had to be burnt. First she was afraid, and she signed the document she shouldn't have signed. She repented, and she went to the fire. But before she went to the fire, she said, I hope I don't burn long. I don't live long. Let me die quickly in this fire. And so she did. Not because she was afraid of the fire, because she wanted to go quickly to Christ. Her heart changed with a greater love than she even had before, and so she went straight to heaven. And so, what are we going to do in the time of crisis? Our Lord wants to hear our prayers. There will be some who won't be thrown into prisons. There will be some who escape all of the surveillances and all the GPS and all the satellites. There will be others who will be martyrs, but God doesn't know which one will be. God knows which ones will be martyred and which ones won't, but we don't. It's not our concern. We know that all we have to do is love our Lord, and He will hear our prayers. And so when one day when Praxedis, with her heart broken, with her heart filled with the love of all of God's children, Lord, I don't want to see the evils of Rome anymore. Let me die. And our Lord heard her prayer and brought her into the kingdom of heaven. So, we're in a great battle. We're entering into a great time in the history of the church. And our Lord wants priests. priests in the time of the chastisement. Some may be martyrs, others will not. He wants sisters, he wants brothers, he wants Catholic families. Some will be thrown in prisons, others will escape. They will not be able to be captured. I always forget that like St. John Nepomucus, another saint, was escaping from the bad guys, and he went into a closet, and spiders came, and in a minute made 1,000 spider webs in front of him. And when the soldiers came to open the closet, they saw all the spider webs. So when no one's in here, the spider webs are there. And so he escaped. Spiders helped him escape. And so it has happened so many times from that day when St. Peter walked out of the prison 2,000 years ago. Straight out of the prison. And that St. Paul had to jump over the wall and escape. They escaped when they wanted to escape. And then they went to martyrdom when there was time for them to be martyrs. Because God makes a schedule. And so when we head into this great fight that's going to come, when they have all the surveillance systems in the world, they have all the weapons that they never had before. The devil has so many more weapons and so many more soldiers at his disposal than he ever had before. But he has no more power. And our Lord can just as easily escape these fools with all their technology as he could escape the other fools of olden times. So there will be a time when they will come after us, but they will not find us. And they will try to throw us in prison, but no prison will receive us. And the gates will open, we'll be able to walk out. And there will be many souls who will not know martyrdom, but they will be able to die in charity, and God will hear the prayers. Like it says in the book of Isaiah, reading the other day, just a few days ago or last week, God hears the prayers of those who live in charity. When a man lives in justice and charity, says the book of Isaiah, when he lives in justice and charity, and he speaks, God comes to him and says, "Here I am. Here I am." And so we have to have charity in our hearts. We have to be ready that our homes be the place of those who are in need, those that are struggling, that we find a way to help the others. And when we help them physically, when we help them materially, we're going to go after their souls. We're after their souls. And St. Praxedis and St. Jerome of Ilionic and St. Camillus the Lilis, the saints of the month of July, devoted themselves so much to charity, and through their charity they brought many, many souls to heaven. Confirmed many souls to the path of Christ. The rules haven't changed. The law hasn't changed. And the truth will always bring the victory. We're on the side of the victors. We don't have to worry about that. So long as we stay on the side of Christ and the divine truth. And don't play games with the truth. And no matter how weak we are, our Lord wants to hear our prayers. He wants to hear our requests. The thief, when he spoke to Christ on Good Friday, did not have a good record. He had only wickedness to show for his life. But when he cried with confidence to our Lord Jesus Christ at the sight of the Holy Mother at the foot of the cross, our Lord heard him. Mary Magdalene, the first day she met Christ, she only prayed with her tears. And she was completely forgiven and brought to the highest point of love, the highest point of charity, that she climbed above the apostles. That first day that she met Christ. But she didn't have a good background. Coming from impurity and coming from prostitution. She didn't have a good background. But she came to Christ and she wept. And she was forgiven. And she was given the greatest height of sanctity. The same is true of so many. Our Lord is not concerned about our backgrounds. He knows they're all very bad. Some are horrible. Some are really horrible. Some are bad. All are some degree of bad. But that is what our Lord is concerned about. He's wiped away all of the weakness and all the sins of our lives if we have faith and if we try from this moment on to change, from this moment on to grow in charity, from this moment on to change our way of life. This is what's required of us. And we can't do it without the grace of God, without the protection of the grace of God. We'll follow the example of Praxedis and so many other saints. They are our example in these times. God is going to determine the moment that we will pass into eternity. God is going to the moment that we will enter into the judgment. And if we are His friends, It will only be at the best moment, the best time. And there will be good that will come from everything if we only have the faith. Not everyone is going to be a martyr, even in the great chastisement. Not everyone is going to be thrown in the gulag. Not everyone is going... But one thing for sure, those who prepare materially, those who think they're ready because they have a gun license and went to gun school, those who think they're ready because they know karate and Wong Feng Wui, and Mexican judo, and all the other kinds of martial arts, those who think they're ready in this way, for certain they shall not make it. That much is certain. But those who have confidence in Christ can walk across a minefield without a metal detector and never step on a ball. Our Lord knows better about mines than any expert in mines. He knows better about bullets. He knows better about karate. He knows better about all these things. Our preparation for the chastisement and our preparation for the battle to come is a preparation of faith and a preparation of charity, a preparation of confidence in God, a preparation of spreading that faith with the love of God in our hearts and trying to spread that love in our neighbors and trying to open our doors for those that are in need. There's always a way to help someone, even in some small way. This is the way to prepare for survival. The other ways, for sure, do not work. So don't have confidence in them. We don't need a militia. We don't need machine guns. We don't need all the modern weapons. They'll be used by our enemies. We need faith. And we need charity. And these things will conquer all the weapons of the world. It's always worked. It will always work. When Gideon went to battle, he carried a trumpet, he carried a water pot, and he carried a lantern. Not the best weapons for night fighting. But when he went into the night with a trumpet and a lantern and a candle, he defeated all the enemies of God. And so we have to carry a trumpet, true faith, the earthen vessel that is our own fragile cells can be dropped by the smallest drop. No OtterBox is built for mankind. Smallest drop, and we are broken. And the candle. Candle which will go out if we're filled too much with ourselves. Let the candle of faith be inside of us. The weapons of Gideon, the spirit of Jonas, the spirit of Tobias, the way of Praxedes. These are the ways of our times. So let's pray for that kind of faith necessary for the great fight to come. And only the Blessed Virgin can prepare us for the fight. Each one of us has a different role, and we don't know what it is. But God knows, the Blessed Virgin knows. And we just have to be ready to answer her call. Like St. Teresa of the Child Jesus said, I want to be a broom in a closet. If she doesn't want to sweep the floor, then I just want to stay in the closet. If she wants to sweep the floor, then I want to come out and be a broom to sweep the floor. And if not, then back in the closet. I just want to be as she wants me to be, when she wants me to be, where she wants me to be, and that's all. And then, whenever the great fight comes, she'll make sure she has some use for us. God bless you all, and the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.